Good morning, Cavaliers. I'm Isabelle, and you're listening to Cavalier Careers, the next step. Have you ever wondered what it was like to walk in the shoes of someone who has your dream job? Have you ever thought about whether or not the work you're doing now is worth it? Well, today at Cavalier Careers, I'm here to give you those answers. Today on Cav Careers, we have Mr. Roger Stewart Frederick and Miss Marilyn Brady. Mr. Stewart is CHS's very own ASL teacher, and Miss Brady is an interpreter who has worked here for a short time as his interpreter. Thank you for coming to our studio today. Mr. Stewart, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Caroline High School and what you do every day?
So first, I want to say thank you for allowing me to come this afternoon. And a little bit about myself. My name, of course, is Roger Stewart. And I've been teaching for about 20 years. I've taught different things such as PE, different subjects, maybe history, gym. But the most important thing has been to be able to teach ASL. I grew up in Europe, and my parents were both military. I was born deaf, but I was mainstreamed in school growing up. There were very few other deaf kids that were with me that were classmates in my school. I did have an interpreter who followed me around in the mainstream school up until through college. And what got me to come to Caroline, I'm just going to say it was a gift from God. I've taught at other schools before this. I was teaching at Louisa before coming here. And I worked there for 5 years. I was able to coach there. And it's a long story. Make a long story short, I was knocking on different doors, and I feel like God gave me this opportunity to teach here. And I found out that this job was open, and I was able to take it. So, yeah.
It's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, when did you both start learning ASL? How did you start learning? In school or at home?
This question is for both of us?
Yeah.
Okay. So the interpreter, I'll go first. I lived in North Carolina for a while, and I had a friend there who was deaf. At that point, I was a military wife, and so our husbands were deploying often, and we were stuck kind of together as friends. And so I learned from her during that time. Then when I moved to Virginia, I was able to go to Gallaudet University for a few years, and really that was just an awesome experience. Of you can be immersed in many languages to learn them. That's what we know is best, but it's very hard to find that place to have immersion for ASL, and Gallaudet really provided that for me. Mr. Stewart says, with me, I was born deaf, and so my parents knew nothing about sign before that I was born. And so they really had no way of communicating with me. They would use other options and find other ways to interpret with me. Understand that my parents were both military, and they were constantly deploying, going to war. So they had no one to teach them how to sign during that time. I had my own teachers, my own interpreters, and they were the ones who taught me how to sign. And that's where I started signing around the age of, I think, about 6. And as I said, I was mainstreamed. So most of the teachers there in Europe, they did know some sign, but it was the sign language of where we were. So in Germany, I started to learn German Sign Language. And then later, I learned British Sign Language, and then again moved to America and was able to learn American Sign Language. So I traveled around a lot and went back and forth between those. And so I've grown up learning actually very different sign languages.
I know I've heard a little about that from you. So it's cool to hear it again. Oops.
Thank you.
Miss Brady, when did you decide that interpreting was a job for you? What inspired you to become an interpreter?
I think interpreting picks you. You don't pick interpreting in the way that it happened for me. I love education and students. And so there's a large piece, kind of where he's saying that many families don't learn sign. And being able to work with students was really just amazing, and see them develop language. We call it language deprivation, and that many deaf children don't have access to language. What we know about that is language is really important before a certain time in your life for you to be able to be successful and to continue with fluency in language. So it's really where I fell in love with interpreting, was being able to work with children and see them just develop language. It's a beautiful thing. It's a part of what makes us human, is being able to communicate.
Oh. So I know you said you went to Gallaudet. We went in the spring. Wait, we're going again in the spring. We went
just recently, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Stewart says about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. I wished you could have gone with us.
As well, yes. Mr. Stewart says he was hoping the same.
He was a little sad. We didn't stay long.
Right.
No.
He said, we'll stay longer in the springtime. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, it was so fun and really cool to see everyone signing. There was a lot more hearing people than I thought there was going to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Stewart says, interesting, the culture there on campus. You have to find a place for yourself there. You have to fit yourself in there. You have to become, it requires you to learn a lot more language and to be able to continue on campus.
I thought it was cool to see how there were interpreters for the hearing people and not the deaf kid. Yeah.
Right.
It's really cool. Mr. Stewart, what challenges did you face when first learning to communicate with interpreters, and how did you overcome them?
So I said before that I grew up mainstreamed, and I had to deal with different interpreters each time. For example, if I changed schools, there would be a new interpreter. So it was very difficult for me because I wanted to keep the same interpreter for that consistency. But at the same time, you can't have just the same interpreter because of the state or the federal or government and how the interpreters are paid. So as a student, I had to accept what I got, whichever interpreter they sent me. There's only one time that I was able to keep an interpreter that I preferred. It was for the elementary and middle school. I kept an interpreter for about 8 years. I think that's the most that I had the same interpreter. And then my family moved back to the US. And my sophomore year, I had no interpreter. I was there at the high school I was at. That interpreter did not have a deaf and hard of hearing program. So I felt like that my voice was taken away. It was very difficult to get through that. So I had to then at that point transfer schools again. Not long after that. And then in my junior year, I was able to have an interpreter, and they provided everything that I needed. At that time, it felt like going back to square one. My classmates that were deaf, the interpreter was there. There was teachers. They all knew how to sign. And so at that point, I was more comfortable. And then going to college, I had a similar situation. I'd have to ask and request interpreters for college. So the toughest part has been being able to get used to each individual interpreter and their style. All interpreters have a different way of signing. And sometimes they'll ask me, do you prefer more English or do you prefer more ASL sentence structure? And I do prefer ASL because it's easier for me to understand. So working through those communication challenges with interpreters. And, as of today, I have this interpreter. So
I feel like it helps that you've met her before.
yes, I can see that. Most people don't understand the difference between texting to communicate, for example, and signing, right? There's a big difference in those in how that we communicate. When we're texting, those sentences are long. It's a lot of English sentencing or a lot of English sentences. And sometimes those are hard for me to understand, for example. ASL breaks it down more and makes it easier for the individual who's deaf to understand and see language more visually. Those of us that are deaf have a hard time processing our thoughts in English. And so that's why having that interpreter makes it easier for us and provides another avenue of access to communication and language.
I feel the same with sign.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, when I hear the national anthem, I see the signs.
Like in your head, you see.
Yeah, I'm seeing the signing in my head now.
That's good. Mr. Stewart says, in ASL, we're not signing every single word, and we're breaking the language down a little bit more. And for me, it just makes it easier to understand what's going on in life.
I suck a little with not saying every word. Like,
right. It requires practice. Yeah. As the interpreter, if I may too, that's part of like what we're experiencing right now is a little bit more difficult for me because we call it SimCom. So it's where you're trying to talk English at the same time that you're signing. It's very difficult because they don't really line up, right?
Yeah.
And so that's also a challenge that you're experiencing at this moment. Just because I don't know if everyone can see or who's just listening or watching, but you're trying to sign and do the interview at the same time, which is extremely challenging. So you're doing a great job.
Thank you. So what do you both feel is the most rewarding part of teaching ASL?
I'm going to direct that to Mr. Stewart because I'm not a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm an interpreter. And so just to let him answer that. The most rewarding part of teaching ASL is really being able to give back. Almost like if you're going to another country, you want to learn about their culture, right? You want to know about those people. So how are you going to be how are you going to learn their language and their culture? Those are things that you're working on when you're going to visit another country. I'm able to provide that with anyone who wants to learn sign language. And you never know who will stay in your life or who will be in your life. That person maybe will become deaf, or maybe they'll have children who are deaf, or they'll have a family member who's deaf. Maybe they'll later find a best friend who's deaf. And so for me, it's important to be able to learn other people's languages to communicate. And I feel like I do that in my class. A lot of times I encourage them to think deeper. I often ask my class, maybe one day, maybe if you experience it for your parents, your mom, your dad, or maybe you have a 5-year-old brother who becomes sick. And for example, a high fever can cause you to lose your hearing. So you never know what's going to happen. If that does happen, how would you communicate? So I always encourage the students to think of that. And that's why I enjoy teaching sign language. And my thought is, why not show everyone? Because anyone can have those experiences, and we should all learn to sign. It's pretty simple to sign. It does require practice, and you can learn it just the same as any other language from any other country.
That's true. I started trying to teach my mom just a little, like every day, so I can communicate with her from the court, the volleyball. Yeah.
That's good, Mr. Stewart says. In real life, a lot of people do not have enough patience to learn sign language. If you have the patience and your mom to learn it, your mom will follow you, and hopefully you can encourage others to become patient to learn ASL as well. They'll be able to see and understand why you're doing while you're learning ASL. And they will follow after you because of they'll be able to see your motivation for learning ASL. And I believe that your parents and those in your life will be happy to see that you are also happy with learning the language, and you can inspire others as well.
Keep losing my place. Miss Brady, in what ways do you believe interpreters can best help support the deaf community?
This is a tough one. I would say, kind of going back to my personal focus, I've worked a lot with language deprivation, right? And that's really important for children to have access to that. It's also very important. This is a very strange scenario, and that normally interpreters are not a part of the conversation. And it's not being rude or anything. That's really important. On that, it's important for everyone to have a voice, and keeping that in mind as an interpreter, keeping yourself humble, right, and open to the culture, to the community. And it doesn't matter what Mr. Stewart says. I'm interpreting it, right? Sometimes recently we were recently at a wrestling tournament, and for example, Mr. Stewart, I'm interpreting for Mr. Stewart. He's on the mat. He's hollering at the ref because the ref has got one of our kids' arms and shoulders back, and he's like, he's signing shoulder, shoulder, shoulder. So I'm screaming shoulder on the mat, and I'm down, I'm slamming on the mat and trying to get the attention. And the ref went off and yelled at me, like, I know how to do my job. Please don't tell me what to do. It's kind of a funny moment, because then at that moment I was like, hey, that's not me. That's Mr. Stewart. Like, I'm not involved in this at all. But those kind of examples is making sure that you draw those boundaries so that the deaf individuals or whoever that you're interpreting for truly has a voice. So I would say that that's really the most important piece for me, is staying within your boundaries so that you're allowing whoever is using sign language as their primary mode of communication to have proper access.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Why do I sound like that when I said that?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Stewart, what are some common misconceptions that students have about deaf culture, and how do you address them?
It's not only students, it can be anyone. There's a lot of misconceptions. Oh, deaf people can read lips. No, I'm going to say no. That's a common misconception. Or maybe sometimes I've seen where they think that deaf people can, magically become hearing like the next day. Oh, well, you couldn't hear me yesterday, but maybe you can today. A lot of hearing people think that deaf people are that are the same as hearing, and that we think similarly. It's really not true. There are two different kinds of deaf as well. So we call them big D and little d, right? A big D deaf person means that they are extremely deaf and not in necessarily the level of deafness, but perhaps like their family has been deaf and they have culturally been passed down with ASL. There are also some for the smaller D, right? Those people are involved with the hearing world and excuse me, hold on, I got behind. Little D deaf are involved with the hearing world more than people that have grown up with deaf families and access to sign language really from birth. So for example, for my family, I would have been considered a small D deaf, right? Because I grew up in the hearing world and in that culture. Some hard of hearing, we consider ourselves strong in deaf culture. But once I came back to the United States, I started learning more about culture and being able to fit in more at that point. Now I can be in that world of what we call the big D deaf, right? I can involve myself in that world. I'm very comfortable there with other deaf people. I'm also comfortable with the hearing world because that's what I grew up in. And so I'm in a place of where I'm able to exist in both worlds and be comfortable. So what I try to tell people is that you have to understand the culture before that you can really judge anyone. Culture is a part of learning, is important to learn before you start judging anyone and their culture. Try to explain to the students here. So for example, there was something that happened the other day. There was a student who she was talking, so I could tell that she was talking really fast, right? So I'm trying to ask her to slow down so I can understand her. And so she wrote on paper, or maybe she wrote on the board, and she said to me, "I think you can read lips." No. So I had to explain to her that some of us can more than others, but for reading lips, it's really difficult. I'm going to need you to slow down. It's hard for me to read lips, and there can be a lot of miscommunication. So she started slowing down, and I've been teaching her how to sign. And she just recently asked me, and in sign language, like, "Can I go to the bathroom?" Those things that she started to learn. So the student has started to pick up on learning sign language from those moments. So I will tell you this: in that situation, for most deaf people, and if that you're asked like, "Oh, can you read lips?" Some deaf people will not even respond, and they take high offense to that. So if you ask them that question, they would not even respond. That culture I spoke about earlier with that big D deaf, they expect you to learn sign language. Little D, we're kind of, it's not as it's more whatever. But in reality, we should learn other people's languages as we can for that equality and for equity.
It's true. So, like in Switched at Birth, did Daphne be a little D?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yes.
Um,
That's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. You're right.
For listeners, Daphne in Switched at Birth, she's deaf, but she reads lips a lot and doesn't make her real family learn ASL.
Excellent show to watch if anyone is interested in deaf culture. I highly recommend.
Looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of deaf education involvement in Caroline High School?
I joke with, this is the interpreter, I joke with Mr. Stewart that he has started a movement here at Caroline High School. And so for me, I'm looking forward to see what you do next. So you already know I have to thank Marilyn as well. When I first came here, I thought, no, it's okay. It should be easy. We'll see what happens and see what the numbers are like. I am very surprised that we now have a wait list for the ASL class. Not only that, I'm also surprised that after 9 weeks, we've had three more students join recently. So my class has slowly been building up to being, and my classes are now full. I feel that in the future, that maybe we'll add ASL 4 perhaps. We'll see what happens. I'd love to see that happen. Another thing that I'm proud of is that I've had several students that want to join an ASL club. And I thought, oh, there will be maybe 4 to 10 people. No, we had 30 people sign up to join ASL club. And so that's been awesome. I'm excited to see that. It's been very motivating for me and encouraging for me. And I feel like that the students have really started to understand where I'm coming from. I also noticed that many of my other coworkers here, they've been coming to me. They've been saying good job and thank you for what you're doing. Telling me that many students, they're seeing students signing with each other, that they're teaching each other. And that's awesome. I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud of I've become more comfortable in standing in front of the students themselves. I'm also very proud of the students that they've gotten comfortable with signing in public. So if, for example, they've been signing the pledge and the national anthem. At first, again, I thought no one would come and to perform or to help with that. But as I started explaining it to the children, those students, I feel like they've also become to believe in me and what we're doing here. So I've asked them, if you believe in me, I promise you that I will believe in you and we can do this together. The school board, we've signed the pledge there during the school board meetings. At any sports games, we're signing the national anthem at those. We recently did the football game. That was really awesome and perfect for me to experience. I think we had about 10 students that signed the national anthem at one of the football games. And for the audience, the crowd that's there to see, I know many of them were surprised to see that many kids signing and that they were able to learn that quickly because it's only been a few weeks since school started. And I really believe in these students, and I think the parents are starting to see that as well. My goal would be to keep this program growing and also to have ASL also be offered at the middle school. That would be my hope. I hope by maybe this springtime, we can have maybe some of your classmates be able to go to the middle school and have a session of teaching some of those students over there ASL, specifically for the 8th graders, to create that interest so that when they come to the high school, they already know some signs and are able to then join into to ASL classes. So, starting from earlier than what we have. I have a lot of ideas in my bag that I'd like to see happen.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Miss Brady, what has been one of the most rewarding aspects of being an interpreter?
I feel like maybe I'm repeating myself, but really it is seeing kids just acquire language. Not having access to language has got to be debilitating, right? And just feel awful. And you can't express, hey, my stomach hurts, or my friend made me cry today. Not being able to communicate that with your parents, with your friends has got to be, I can't imagine, you're kind of stuck in that box. So one of the most beautiful things has been to see a student, for example, I worked with a 3rd grader at one point, and this child had no language. The school system was trying to tell me that child had bad behavior, potentially had other disabilities. But really what happened is that student started learning sign language, and I have never seen anyone just pick it up so quickly and be hungry to learn language. one moment, the following year after that, she started acquiring language. We're passing the principal in the hallway. This student is now 4th grade, stops the principal and says, "Hey, I've been wanting to tell you, in kindergarten, I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't trying to be bad, but I knew I was crying every day and you were coming in and talking to me. I wasn't trying to be bad. There was a little boy biting me every day." For 4 years, that deaf student had held that inside and not been able to express herself. That should never happen, right? We should be doing much better with providing that access in our counties to anyone who needs it. And so for me, that has been, and I have chills right now, but that has been one of the most beautiful things, is to see that student get her voice. They did not end up labeling her with more disabilities. They just realized that she had language deprivation. And that's my heart and soul with what I've done.
I really enjoy like helping you in your class, but it's hard. Those kids don't listen.
No, they don't. But they're trying. We're trying. We're growing.
It is nice to see them now learning or trying.
Right.
Because back in the start of the year, they're not trying.
Right. I think they also had a wake-up call. They needed to have a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's true.
Because the interpreter left? No.
It is nice. Nice. It wasn't bad for our class because we try.
I think some of what I noticed, this is the interpreter talking, I noticed too, just the levels, right? ASL 1, you think it's going to be easy. You've got this. And then it's not. By the time you get to ASL 2 and ASL 3, you kind of have more of an understanding. And there is definitely a clear difference in what I saw and how those classes behave.
Mr. Stewart, how do you have your lessons engaging and helpful for your students? How would I say that?
How do you bridge the gap?
Bridge the gap?
Maybe like the word connect?
Connect the languages, the language barrier.
So, I'm a wrestling coach,
Yep.
right? And it's similar to almost trying to teach a new baby how to walk and for a technique with wrestling, it's better to start with the students when they're small so that they can learn how to wrestle. At the same time, when you're working with those younger students, you have to make it fun. You have to make wrestling fun. If it's not fun, the kids are not going to stay interested in the sport. So it's similar with teaching ASL. I try to make it fun. I try to find, I joke with the students a lot. Or I try to act funny with my character. So like sometimes, for example, I'll put the phone up to my ear. The students all know I can't hear. I want to laugh at that. Sometimes when they're talking louder, I'll start signing right next to my ear, like I'm trying to talk into my ear with my hands, and just different things that I do to make it fun. Also, teaching them about culture. I start with the basics, the alphabet at first. And then if you can fingerspell, then you can start putting words together at that point. So, for example, the sport of golf. So I will teach the kids, for example, you can finger spell the word golf, right? But how do you think that you would sign that? So I try to make it fun with explaining that the sign for golf looks a lot like a golf swing. I try to keep ASL 1, 2, and 3 separate on the difficulty levels for each class. That is appropriate for ASL. For example, ASL 1, we're learning very basic signs. We're learning signs for family, the bathroom, who, what, when, where, how, please, sorry, those kind of words. When it comes to ASL 2 and 3, there is a lot more about culture, not just learning the words.
I remember your golf joke. You told the ASL 1 kids, take T, the O.
Yes, exactly.
And it flies away. I thought that was really cool. The kids thought it was funny.
There's a word for that, and I can't think of it right now. There's a word for that kind of joke in ASL that uses each letter. I know.
Mrs. Brady, what is the process to becoming an interpreter?
The state of Virginia has their own licensure or certification. It's called the Virginia Quality Assurance Screening. You can take that in Richmond. For national certification, they are requiring now a bachelor's degree. So that is important. You can get your bachelor's degree in anything. It does not have to be in interpreting. I personally highly recommend exactly what you're doing now, the communication with Mr. Stewart and other people who are deaf. That is really how I learned and was able to become fluent, was through that interaction with other deaf people. For any language or anything that you're learning, any science or any topic, you can sit in the classroom all day, but until that you're actively using that sign or using the things that you're learning, it's that really does give you a step up if that you want to become an interpreter. So that would be my suggestion. Mr. Stewart says, and to follow up with after that, what Marilyn just said, in the springtime, I think I told Marilyn already. I'm willing to see if I can offer some basic maybe certifications for interpreting, something I'm looking at maybe working on in the springtime, so that you can interpret at a certain level, perhaps. So that you could be with ASL interpreting services. They do have some, excuse me, the word has left my mind in English. They have like a screening that they do for interpreters to be able to freelance. And at that point, then you could register through that company. You would take the test through them. They would video and they would grade you and give you a number, 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever that is. Based on that grade, it would say if you passed or did not pass, and they would give you a certification. And that would be the next step for ASL 3 in the springtime to help them to lead to becoming an interpreter. It would also open doors for someone like you to be able to become an interpreter. When that you take this is the interpreter again speaking, when you take the testing that he's talking about, there is 3 parts to that test. There is a written part. There is, it's really more than that. There's a ASL performance on that signing. There's ASL that you then voice. And then there is English. It's more English word order. You again sign and then voice. So it is quite a lengthy process.
13. Okay. Last but not least, Mr. Stewart, you are more than a teacher. From what we understand, you have a fascinating life. Can you talk to us a little bit about your wrestling career? What are some successes you have with wrestling?
So I've been wrestling for about 25 years. I never thought that I would get to the top level. I have competed in the Olympics at this point. I have competed in 3 Deaf Olympic Games. I've been to 4 World Championships and to many national tournaments. Now I am the assistant coach for Shenandoah University. And I also volunteer coach here at Caroline High School at times. I just really enjoy what I do, and it's a part of my motivation to give back.
You're a cool person.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you, Mr. Stewart and Miss Brady, for joining me today on the Cav Careers podcast. Cav Careers The Next Step has been a production of the Mass Media Class in Innovation at Caroline High School. Thank you for tuning in to Cav Careers. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep the conversation going.